Hey guys, Sid from Sid's Trains here, and welcome to episode 1 of my Lionel Legendary Hudson series. Here in episode 1, we are going to be reviewing and running one of the most legendary Lionel Hudsons ever made, the mighty 700E New York Central J1E. So you may be asking yourself, what is this model in front of you? This is the Lionel 1990 remake of the legendary 700E Hudson. That is why I said one of the most legendary. The most legendary Lionel Hudson is the 700E number 5344 from 1937. It is a full-scale model of the New York Central's J1E Hudson. The model in front of you is a remake of that model from 1990. Instead of being numbered 5344, this model was numbered 5340. This is probably, in my opinion, the second most legendary Hudson Lionel ever made, and it is an amazing model, and we're going to go over that in a few minutes. But first, let's go over some history on the real New York Central Hudson and this model in particular. The New York Central Hudsons were a series of 464 type steam locomotives built by the American Locomotive Works, ALCO, and the Lima Locomotive Works from 1927 to 1938 for the New York Central Railroad. The name came from the Hudson River, and the 464 wheel arrangement from then became known as a Hudson type in the United States, as these locomotives were the first examples built and used in the United States. Built for high-speed passenger train work, the Hudson locomotives were known for pulling some very famous New York Central passenger trains, including the 20th Century Limited and the Empire State Express. With diesels coming along in the mid-20th century, all Hudsons were retired and subsequently scrapped, with none being preserved to this day, except for a tender from J1E number 5313, which is preserved at Steamtown National Historic Site in Scranton, Pennsylvania. With a little bit of history on the real New York Central Hudsons out of the way, let's move on to Lionel's model of the J1E Hudson, and most notably the 700E. The first ever 700E was made in 1937, and then was made from then until 1941, when when America entered the war, and then Lionel had to stop train production. The 700E was numbered 5344, and New York Central 5344 was one of the most famous New York Central J1E Hudsons, as in its later life it was converted to a streamlined locomotive and was named the Commodore Vanderbilt, which I will be doing a video on in this series. But back to this engine, the 700E was state-of-the-art in the Lionel model train line. It was a die-cast model. It was not a tin plate model like the trains before, but it was a brand new design. It was made from die-cast metal. It had separately applied details. It had tons and tons of rivet detail. One of the most one thing that was known about the Hudson was that it had the same amount of rivets on the tender as it did in real life, but people have counted the number of rivets on the tender, and they have found that the model was a couple rivets off. But that just shows that the model was so close to a full-scale and accurate model of the real thing that it was the best of the best. And that's what got Lionel into making the die-cast models, was the 700E scale Hudson, number 5344. Then Lionel had to stop production due to the war, but then they came back from after the war. They came back into production, and they started producing die-cast model trains again. They didn't produce a scale Hudson, but they produced die-cast scale models, and that's the impact that the 700 had on Lionel. It changed their style of production from tin plate model trains to die-cast model trains, and that was such a big thing, and that's why we are in the that's why the hobby is the way it is today. We could still be playing with tin plate model trains, but instead Joshua Lionel Cowan made the 700E, and that changed the hobby forever. Fast forward to 1990, it's Lionel's 90th anniversary. What do they make? They make this model in front of you. This is a remake of the mighty 700E Hudson. Instead of being numbered 5344, it is numbered 5340. Still an accurate number for a J1E Hudson, but not the same. It was supposed to be actually numbered 5390 for the 90th anniversary, but collectors did not want that as it was not a accurate number for a J1E Hudson. So Lionel decided to change that to 5340. The model in front of you is an almost exact replica of the 1937 700E Hudson, but with a couple modern updates, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at. Something I forgot to mention was it was revolutionary back in 1937 for Lionel to make this model, and it changed everything about their company. This model from 1990 did the same. Up until 1990, Lionel had been making pretty much the same models they made back in the 1950s during the post-war era. The post-war trains were very nice. They were nice die-cast models, and they were nice trains, but they were not full-scale models. Then Lionel had their kind of rough years with General Mills, but Richard Kuhn bought Lionel, and he turned the company around. There were a couple scale models made by Lionel before this in 1990, but this changed everything. This model celebrated their 90th anniversary and brought Lionel back to their roots of die-cast model making. They were to make trains that were die-cast and full scale. From 1990 on, Lionel started shifting away from the semi-scale models and moving towards scale models. As you see in their lineup today, almost everything is a full-scale model. Sure, they make the entry-level trains and some semi-scale trains, but everything is aimed at accuracy and being full scale. And that's what this model did, and it was so revolutionary for them in 1990. It amazes me that a design from 1937 could make such a difference. So starting out at the front here, we have the pilot at the front. It has some very nice vent detail and some steps on each side, which gives it a very, very good look. Sometimes just simplicity is key. I have a lot of trains. A lot of different trains have complicated detailing and a lot of fancy looking styling. This engine is just a regular old black steam engine, and the simplicity of it is what makes it so good. Moving up, we have a scale coupler, and that scale coupler has a pin with a chain attached to it that moves with the coupler bar, and when you move it up and down, the chain and the pin moves with it, which is a very nice touch. Moving up, we have the headlight, and then on the sides and on the front we have number boards, and they all say 5340 on them. This front does open, and here is one of the first differences between the old 700E and this model. The old 700E had a light that just stuck out the front and was attached to the chassis. This model has a clip with the light attached to the swinging door, which is different. Moving up, we have the marker lights. These are not illuminated, but they do have some very nice looking shiny green jewels in them. And then running down the side of each side of the engine are these nice handrails. Then we also have some steps moving up the side of the engine. So moving down the side of the engine, we see the continuation of the handrails, which looks very nice. Above them is a ton of piping detail, which is all separately applied. That is not molded in to the shell. All of these pipes here and this right here is all separately applied, which is just amazing to see. And it just makes everything pop on this engine. You can really see all the detailing when it's separately applied. When it's molded in, it's not as easy. Like this up here is molded into the casting, which makes it kind of harder to see. But all this is separately applied, so it really pops and you can see it. At the bottom of the engine here, we see all the running gear. Each wheel has a really nice silver, a shiny silver rim to it, which looks great. All of the valve and linkage gear is shiny and it looks amazing. And there's even details on this that you don't even see on models today. This little lubricator linkage here, you don't even see on more modern Hudsons made by Lionel. So it just goes to show that this model is just a amazing scale detailed model. On the side of the cab here, we have a lot of great rivet detail. We have crisp 5340 numbering and J1E lettering. On the underside of the smoke box here, we have a lot of separately applied detailing, mostly piping, and a lot of rivet detail. And there's even some molded in piping, which just adds to the overall great effect that this engine puts off. When you look at this model, you just think scale, detailed model. You don't have to like look and nitpick things to find the details. They just pop and you really see everything. On top of the engine, we can get a better look at this amazing piping here. It's just amazing. These little clips that hold the pipes on, they just look really cool to me. I don't know what it is. It's just everything's so evenly placed and it just looks really good. At the front here, we have the smokestack, and inside there is the smoke unit. In 1937, Lionel did not have smoke in their trains, so that is an update on this model. Moving back, we have a little free swinging bell here, which looks really nice. We have a dome, looks like a sand dome. We have a steam dome here, and then we have the whistle, which is separately applied and is this nice chrome, and it has a good shine to it. We have some safety valves at the back here, and then we have a separately applied dynamo. On top of the cab, there is molded in vents. Sadly, they do not move, but the original model did not have that either. So at the back of the cab here, this model never had any kind of back head detail on the steam or smoke box, so you could always see the motor. So let me get a light here and just shine some lighting there. So there you can see the Pullmer motor in this engine, which this engine has a very nice strong powerful motor in it. And you can also see this wire hanging down here. That's for the rail sounds in this engine, which is also an updated feature. And at the bottom underneath that, there is part of the drawbar here. And then you can also see it's a little hard to see, but there's a plug here that I'm moving, and that was for the E unit. Instead of having the E unit switch sticking out of the top of the cab or out of the top of the boiler, they decided to put a little plug inside the cab to prevent the engine from having a big hole on the top of it. So moving to the tender here, we can see all this rivet detailing on this. That was the big thing about this model, was that the tender had just about as many rivets on the tender as the real J1E Hudson did in real life, which was just so amazing. And you can tell there's just a lot of rivet detailing, and it just looks great. We also have crisp New York Central lettering on the side, which looks great. And this entire model has a great paint job. It's a nice deep black color. It's kind of a semi-gloss finish, which looks great, and just kind of sets it off from other models. Most models have a more matte finish to them, kind of a more flat color, but this model is a little more shiny. At the front of the tender here, we have four separately applied handrails We have separately applied steps down here. Here's the other end of the drawbar with the little pin that connects it. And then we also have some safety tread here, which is a very nice touch. And here is the plug for the rail sounds. At the back of the tender here, we have a separately applied ladder. We have separately applied handrails, separately applied steps, and then a metal knuckle coupler that is operating. So on top of the tender, we have some nice hatch detail back here. We have a little separately applied ladder and a little toolbox here. Then on top we have a molded coal load, which looks very nice, but it's kind of out of date by today's standards, but that doesn't really bug me, as lots of my models also have a molded coal load. I flipped the engine over here to show you another difference between the old 700E and this model. The old 700E had all sets of drivers flanged. This model doesn't. See these flanges here? This set of wheels flanged, this one is, but these aren't. The old 700E was designed to run on wide radius track. But Lionel knew when they made this model that not everyone had wide radius track, so they changed the center drivers to unflanged wheels, and now this model can run on tighter turns. So before I start this engine up and run it around for a little, let me just talk about why I love this model so much and why I have it in my collection. As a kid, I saw TM books and videos, clips on this engine and the New York Central Hudson, and I just grew to love the style of engine the New York Central Hudson was, and I love history. The history and story behind the 700E just amazes me, and it's why I want the original 700E. That's the model I would love to have one day, but they are just super expensive, and at the time I just cannot afford that. So this is the next best thing. It is the remake of the 700E Hudson with modern touches added, but it still looks like it, and that's what I wanted. I just want the look of it, and I just love Hudsons in general, so that's why I have this model, and I personally would recommend it to anybody in the hobby. So now let me start the engine up, and we'll run it around for a little. Here's the whistle. Here's the bell. Let's roll her out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on the Lionel Legendary 700E Hudson. I'm going to be doing more videos on Lionel Legendary Hudsons very soon, including the Commodore Vanderbilt, the Empire State Express Hudson, some of the semi-scale 773 Hudsons, and even a non-New York Central Hudson, the C&O Yellow Belly. So definitely stay tuned for those videos very soon, and as always, like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Comment below and tell others about the channel. I'm Sid, and I'll see you next time, guys.